Okay, for this week's episode of RuPaul's Drag Race, it was time to go back to the Snatch Game. This is a competition they really like to do every single year. I mean, they recycled this one. I think this is now the fourth time in a row they've actually done this. I think they do it every year. I mean, it's a fan favorite. Everybody seems to like it, and it's a lot of fun. You get to see a lot more personality in the contestants and everything when they do this competition. I really liked it. Now, for all future RuPaul's Drag Race potential candidates that are going to be trying out, just remember that when you go on the show, there are certain characters that you don't want to be in the Snatch Game. First of all, you don't want to do Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga gets done every year, and every queen that does it does terrible. And you would think they would have learned this lesson after 4 years, but Fifi didn't learn this lesson. If you're not a natural comedian, you want to pick someone that's pretty funny. You don't want to do Diana Ross, for example, Milan, or Aretha Franklin, Latrice. Now, Latrice made her a little bit funny, but towards the end of the competition, Latrice just shut down, and it was because of the antics of the people in the front row. I mean, I don't really understand why people do Beyonce seemingly every year either, but I mean, there have been some pretty good portrayals of Beyonce in the past. Kenya, you would think she would have done maybe J-Lo. J-Lo would have been a good one for her, but she didn't pick anybody Spanish. She ended up picking Beyonce. She did a terrible Beyonce. She had Beyonce farting. She had Beyonce on OxyContin. She had Beyonce falling in the floor. I mean, this was a very disrespectful portrayal of Beyonce. Her physical antics got Jiggly all riled up. So Jiggly thought that to best Kenya, she was going to actually have to do something funny. So she just decides to try to wipe everyone off of the front row right off into the floor by smashing into them. It wasn't funny. It just looked very immature. Fifi, dressed as Lady Gaga, was not funny at all. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, the outfit was pretty good. She did do a pretty good physical representation of Lady Gaga, but just the acting was terrible. She wasn't funny at all. And you knew she wasn't going to be funny because when RuPaul in the workroom went up and asked her, you know, who are you doing? She was like, oh, I'm going to do Lady Gaga. And RuPaul was like, oh, how are you going to make her funny? What personality are you going to show of Lady Gaga? And Fifi just goes, she likes her fans. That's a pageant-worthy answer. And I'm really getting to the point where I don't think my respect for Fifi now is at the level that originally started out. Fifi has proven to be a bitch week in and week out. There was only 1 week where she wasn't edited to look like a bitch. But tonight's episode was pretty bad. And it was more so on Untucked than the actual episode, because on Untucked they were discussing the antics that were going on in the Snatch Game, and Fifi just didn't seem like it bothered her at all, the way she performed. She just didn't like the fact that Jiggly smashed into her because it hurt. Now, Sharon actually decides that she's going to do Michelle Visage for her celebrity impersonation on the Snatch Game. That's kind of risky since Michelle Visage is RuPaul's best friend, has known her for years, and she's also basically a permanent judge or fixture at the judging table on RuPaul's Drag Race. But Sharon does do a pretty good job. I mean, it's pretty funny. And, of course, I love how they edit Fifi to the point where she looks like she completely hates Sharon Needles. But, of course, Sharon and Fifi have something to say about each other. And Fifi is of the opinion that it's a bad idea for Sharon Needles to do Michelle Visage. And, I mean, they try to make Fifi look like she's going to make a bold prediction, but it always kind of indicates the direction that the actual challenge is going to go. If Fifi says that Sharon is going to do poorly and stands a good chance of going home this week, Sharon usually does a great job. Fifi is definitely no Nostradamus. And of course, as usual, Chad Michaels does share, but I mean, this competition was pretty much made for Chad Michaels. I mean, this challenge was Chad Michaels to lose. I mean, it's celebrity impersonations, and she does share for a living, so I mean, this is perfect for her. And of course, she wins this challenge, of course. Just like I sometimes think that the Snatch Game is scripted for the better actors in the group. That would be Willem. I think Sharon Needles would probably fall into that, and Chad Michaels. It's more suited to them. I think the mini challenge for the Snatch Game every year is also, kind of scripted. Because unlike the other mini challenges where they're breaking up into teams and they get to be team captains, the mini challenge from the Snatch Game is always a reward. It's usually a phone call from home or something like that. And it seems like every year, the person that ends up winning it, they don't really have a backstory that would necessarily mean that they needed that phone call from home. The winner is going to usually end up being single, so they don't have a boyfriend or a girl, girlfriend, a boyfriend that they need to, call. It's not that important to them that they actually win. Or, they don't have close family members that they want to call. But for some reason, it seems like the single person always ends up winning. And the person who's, is going to end up getting the phone call, the reward, they always have a backstory in the edited video. Like, oh, I miss my boyfriend. It's our anniversary, tomorrow, which is the story from this year. Chad Michaels' boyfriend, Adam, it was their anniversary coming up, and Chad Michaels was missing him. So, you knew Chad was going to end up getting that video call. That phone call. And you knew that the winner was not going to be Chad Michaels. Because the person that has the most to lose in this competition, the mini challenge, that really wants the phone call, they always end up doing terrible. So it ended up that Fifi, the single one, ends up winning the mini challenge. Now, the first part of the competition, they had to pin something on RuPaul's face. And Fifi didn't really get that close. She actually ended up, pinning it to her ear. But, Sharon walked off into no man's land and pinned it on the pit crew. And then you saw Jiggly go up. Now, Jiggly came very close to winning. I think Jiggly could have won, but apparently her blindfold is see-through, and the script said she wasn't supposed to win. She already got a video call previously this season on Untucked from her brother, so she didn't need that phone call. It was supposed to be scripted that Fifi was going to win. So in this first round, Sharon had to walk off and wander into no man's land. So Sharon was out of it. So it was really down to Fifi and Jiggly goes up and is getting ready to pin it right to RuPaul's face, and then decides to move over like half an inch away from Fifi's pin, so Fifi ends up winning. And in an anticlimactic end to that story, of course, Fifi goes up to Chad. Just like every year when the person that wins goes up and gives their phone call to someone else in a strategic move. She tells Chad, oh, I know it would mean more to you, so I'm going to give this phone call to you. And they hug. Oh, it's so sweet. But we know Fifi was really that caring and that considerate, and she would have been a little bit nicer to Latrice. Because Latrice is upset about the Snatch Game a little bit later on. And she brings it up in the workroom. She's all upset about it, the way that the front row acted. And Fifi, since she was on the front row, doesn't take too kindly to, being called immature and unprofessional. So, she basically says, at her age, she shouldn't be a bitch. That really pissed me off when I heard that. So after the Snatch Game, it's off to the runway, and we get to see everybody's runway looks. Most everyone did pretty well. There were two big exceptions. Sharon actually came out all bandaged up, and apparently stuck a syringe that were led to believe was Botox into her lip. Injected her lip. It was jarring, bold, different, unusual, a little bit uncomfortable for me. I mean, I liked it, but it was very uncomfortable for me to watch. I don't know, I didn't like it. It was just a little bit too different for that particular runway challenge that they were doing. I liked Sharon Needles, but just didn't really like that look. And then the other person was Milan. Milan was doing drag king, really. Came out looking like a man, looked like a Motown singer that basically had come out for, a cabaret show in Las Vegas is what it looked like. It did not work. I hated it. Absolutely detested it. I don't know what possessed Milan to think that was going to be a good look. And once again, it seems like I'm talking about Fifi an awful lot in this episode, but Fifi came out looking like Cleopatra going to the gym. Had this big, huge, triangular-shaped pyramid. Yeah. It kind of looked like what she wore in the pre-season cast bio interview. It was a huge, shoulder pads that were up on her shoulders, and she's wearing it looked like a workout, like a leotard, basically, is what it looked like. And it looked like Cleopatra going to the gym. I just did not like that look either. So, long story short, the bottom two was Milan versus Kenya. And I think it should have been a bottom three. I think if RuPaul could have done it, she would have done a bottom three. And the bottom three would have been Fifi, Kenya, and Milan. But of course, Milan worked it out again, as usual, for the second time, and survived. Kenya, you could tell that even though she's very pretty, she's very fish, this just was not the competition for her. And so that's it for this episode. Now next week, it looks like they're going to have a photo shoot that involves water and the pit crew. We really didn't get to see too much in the previews of next week's video and next week's episode, except that Willem and Fifi are gonna be throwing shade at each other. So Fifi always has to throw shade at someone, so next week it's gonna be Willem, apparently, and probably also Sharon Needles, but she can't not fight with Sharon Needles. But that's all for this episode. I'll see you guys next week.